Today we're going to be discussing the proper method of cleaning a Northern Pike. We're also going to discuss the appropriate equipment, the right type of board, and certainly with any evolution you want to make sure you have the right tool for the job. And what I normally use is a very thin, very sharp blade, finished steel normally. So first we're going to discuss the equipment. This is an oak board, and you can see that it's got a backsplash, a side splash, and a one direction rinse. It also has rubber pads on the bottom to keep it from slipping. The reason for this configuration is often you're cleaning fish on or over the water, and with Northern Pike in particular, they tend to be a little bit slippery, and the last thing you want to do is to lose control of your catch and lose it overboard. Next, very, very important, this is a very thin bladed stainless steel finish fillet knife. And the reason for the flexibility of the blade is articulating by these floating Y bones is the most important step in cleaning a northern. The Northern Pike is the second largest apex predator in the St. Lawrence Basin, and often anglers will put the fish back instead of trying to clean it because of these notoriously nasty Y bones that the Northern Pike have. So today I'm going to show you the method for not only filleting but removing those Y bones so that you can have a nice white meat meal, very tight grained, very similar to the saltwater tuna texture. So without further delay, this is our contestant for today. Now, how we start this evolution off is very similar to other fillets. We cut just behind the gill plate, and you cut down to the belly, but you're very careful not to go too far because you don't want to penetrate any of the internal organs of the northern and then have them leak all over your fillet. So if you come around here to the back, you can see the backbone is a little bit darker. You have a dorsal fin, and that's a guideline. You're going to cut all the way down both sides of the backbone, exposing the backbone. And key to success here is this is not a race. You want to ensure that you take your time and you won't have any errant cuts, because obviously a slip of the blade and you can destroy a nice looking fillet in a relatively short time. So what you're trying to do here is you're trying to allow this nice sharp blade to travel kind of on its own all the way down the backbone and leave yourself a little bit of a handle. And you can see that you expose the rib cage as you go forward, and you try not to cut through the backbone and the ribs. And once you get down to the back, you can see this is a large female. She's about 8 pounds, 34 inches. Very middle of the road as far as the size, but a very healthy specimen. So now we're going to do the same thing on this side, and you can see that we didn't leave a great deal of meat on the backbone. Once you get the line cut, you're going to flip it so that you have a little bit easier time getting to it. And again, the same as on the other side. You're going to run that bone, and you can hear the click of the knife as you go down the backbone and the ribs without actually cutting them. once again, out the back. Give yourself a little hand hold. And you can see that we did not sacrifice an awful lot of meat pulling that fillet. That gets discarded. Now before we do the Y bones, we want to make sure that we don't have the belly fins or petrels still attached, because they can cause real problems when removing the skin from the fillet. And I'm just going to pull this small section of belly meat off because it's mainly fat with the petrels attached. Okay, so next, here's the trick to removing the Y bones. If you come right in close here, you take your blade and you run the blade the opposite direction with its edge, and it stands up the Y bones. They start here on the top and they go all the way to the bottom, and they run nearly to the skin. So you take your blade and you can hear a very, very subtle tick as you're cutting down. Now you're only cutting down, depending on the size of the fish, 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch. And then you're changing the angle of the blade headed toward the top of the fillet. And the reason for that is you do not want to cut these Y bones, because there's a bunch of them, and if you cut them in half, then you're just doubling your problems and your chances for choking. Now if you see the center line on the fillet, you can run your finger right down the center line. See how my finger will push through that? That's actually the bottom or base of the Y bones. So you've got, your lines are all drawn out for you. And again, your blade is headed up and away. And this is kind of a finesse thing. This is not a just jam your knife in and yank these bones out. They come out kind of slow and methodically. You don't want to rush this process, because the minute you get in a hurry, you cut a bunch of bones in half, and that really decreases the enjoyment of the meal. So you want to get all the way to the tip. And make sure that you're not leaving any behind. You can see that it's got a very nice white color to the meat. Cooks up very, very nice, either baking or frying outside. And the texture is good and tight. Okay, so you've got your Y bones out, and these things are pretty long, pretty nasty. So the next step is to remove the fillet from the skin. You make a little incision here. Now, what I like to do, if it's too slick, you can actually cut a little slice in the skin, but this appears to be in pretty good shape. You could just put a little slice here to allow yourself a finger hold, and then you just kind of articulate this blade the length of the skin. And you work it back and forth kind of gently. This fish isn't very slimy, so he's not sliding. Okay, so you've removed the skin. And of course I left a little bit, why wouldn't I? And that can come off very, very easily. Any other time you'd never leave a little piece of skin, but even, oh I see, there was a little moray or a lamprey mark on there. If you have any imperfections at all in the skin, then it is prone to chipping a little bit on you. But as long as you get the scales off, it is not an issue for the quality of your meat. So I'm just going to kind of pull those off, and there we go. So you have a nice fillet of northern there, and I'll put this right down in the bucket to rinse. And let's check this one to see if there are any marks. No marks on that one, so this should be a little bit smoother. And once again, we're raising the bones, and start at one end and work all the way to the other. Nice and easy, nice light cut. And here your tip of your knife just making contact with those Y bones. And then follow in on the center line once again. Work your way up underneath them. And then remove the Y bones. Doesn't matter if you go from the front part of the fish or the back part, whatever you're more comfortable with. You can see that these are very, very large, and they're needle sharp. They're not something that you would ever want to encounter when you're having dinner. So, and like I said before, this is one of the reasons why a lot of anglers choose not to take this sport fish. Instead, they'll release the majority of them. You can see that those are very, very large bones, and they're shaped like a Y, and you're really not losing anything as far as volume of the meat. It's a little bone that I left behind from the top of the rib cage. And then again, you start working your way down the fillet. Poke a little hole there to keep your thumb in, or put it back underneath. And no loss of meat there. Beautiful fillet there, and completely boneless. And that is all there is to cleaning and taking the Y bones out of a northern pike. Now all that's left is the cleanup and enjoy a nice fresh meal of pike.